joining me. It's Jo, I'm the Millennial knitter. I am down by the river and it's absolutely gorgeous today, so I thought maybe you would like to join me for a bit of knit and chat. I really enjoy these kind of videos. I watch a few of them and I find it a really good way to make a bit of progress. I also need to make a bit of progress on my chunky knit that I'm currently working on, so yeah, join me. We'll chat a little bit about my life, what I'm up to as a knitter, my interests and hobbies and things generally, because I feel like maybe I haven't introduced myself super well, and I hope that you'll enjoy it. Grab your knitting, enjoy a bit of the river with me. Oh, I can hear church bells in the background. I don't know if you can hear that. I hope somebody's maybe getting married today. Really beautiful day for it. So yeah, grab your knitting, come and join me. I hope you enjoy this. If you do, let me know in the comments. Thought I maybe should chat about some of the We Are Knitters drama. I don't have a ton to say on that, but I'll share some of my thoughts. I thought I'd talk a little bit about my week in knitting, and I thought I'd just share a little bit about my life as well, as maybe we don't know each other that well yet. So one of the things in my life in knitting is I popped down to Faversham yesterday and had the most fantastic day out with some friends for a friend's birthday. Oh, rowers coming, hope you can see them. They are making plenty of noise. I'll let them go past before I continue. Well done, guys. I always wonder how they don't crash into things. I think if I was a rower I would absolutely crash into things like all of the time. I suppose as they're going past, one of the things you could know about me, oh, somebody's lost a hat. One of the things to know about me is, as well as knitting, I'm a paddleboarder, which is how I found this brilliant place that I'm sitting at today. So it's down by the river near where I live, and I learnt to paddleboard during the first lockdown, so way back in 2020. I've got family members who are really vulnerable, so during COVID we were on pretty strict lockdown, even when the rest of the world maybe wasn't. We started locking down pretty early to protect somebody in my family, and one of the few things that we kind of thought that we might be able to do was paddleboard, because when you're out in the middle of a river there is no one near you, which is excellent. So my mum and I got paddleboards. Mum really kindly bought them for us, and we had that amazing summer. I think it was the summer of 2020 when the weather was just unbelievable. It was so sunny for months and months and months, and we had the absolute best time paddleboarding. So when I was staying with my family for a while during that time. When I came back from my family to where I stay with my partner, I brought the board with me, and it's been the most amazing excuse to discover some of my local area, get out on the board when I can. And I'm a pretty outdoorsy person generally, and paddleboarding has just been the most fantastic kind of extra hobby. We decided to get our own boards, which they're not cheap, but they've definitely been worth their weight in gold. We got an electric pump, which I seriously recommend if you're thinking about paddleboarding. It'll save you from being completely knackered before you start. And it's just been amazing. We take them on holiday with us. Mum and I also do a lot of hiking in Scotland. And one of the things I'm knitting at the moment is a pair of socks for Mum for when we hike this summer. We're planning to hike one of the mountains that we've had our eye on for a while. I think it's pronounced Sullivan, something like that. It's in that film Eddie. I don't know if you've seen the film. There's a film called Eddie where an older lady finally climbs this mountain she's been wanting to climb her whole life, so it looks amazing. And as well as hiking now, when we go on these outdoorsy holidays, we've got our paddleboards with us too. And again, it just gives you like this desire to explore the local area, which has been really brilliant. So anyway, I went down to Faversham yesterday. I don't know how I got onto hiking and paddleboarding, but hopefully that's interesting for you guys. If it is, leave me a comment or something and I'll talk more about it in one of my next videos. But I've discovered this little place through paddleboarding where I'm sitting now. Oh God, how many rows was that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So I said I'd talk a little bit about the We Are Knitters drama, controversy, whatever you'd like to call it. And I guess I feel like I should, because everybody's talking about it. I don't have a ton to say. I think I should really mention it because I'm currently knitting with We Are Knitters wool, I'm using the Petit wool for this cardigan, which I've talked about in a couple of my other videos, and I've got kind of mixed feelings. I don't know about other people. I do think that a company that sets itself up to be about sustainability, about crafting, about slow fashion and all those kinds of things should really be thinking really carefully about who it partners with, and should be thinking really carefully about if they do decide to partner with a brand that maybe doesn't share the values, could they have used the opportunity to, I don't know, try and get Zara to donate 10p for every crocheted top they sell to a women's charity in Bangladesh or something. It seems like something like that could have gone a long way towards making it feel a bit more authentic. I understand that small businesses need to grow. I am definitely one of the people for whom We Are Knitters was, a gateway drug to other knitting. My first kind of big fancy knit that I really love was their signage sweater. So I don't want to be super negative about the brand, but it does seem a bit thoughtless. It just seems like they didn't think through how people were going to react, especially given how much Zara's been in the knitting and crochet world lately for how cheap some of its crocheted stuff is, and how that definitely can't be ethical. It seems like they had a really good opportunity to, if they were going to partner with Zara, just do something that went towards showing that they were trying to influence Zara in a positive way. And I know it's a David and Goliath situation. I'm sure they didn't have a lot of control in there in terms of the brand partnership, because they are David, Zara is Goliath. But it seems like they could have done something. So I'm quite interested to see. I think for me, I'm going to wait and see what We Are Knitters do about it before making any decisions. I don't currently have any plans to buy from them anyway. I've got quite a lot of stash that I should probably be using up, and I'm really enjoying my local yarn shops now anyway. I think We Are Knitters has been brilliant for bringing people into knitting like me, making it easy, just going, okay, here's a kit. I don't have to think about needle size and yarn weight and all these things that are pretty obtuse when you start out in knitting. I do think they're great for that. Obviously there's Wool and the Gang similar. I think We Are Knitters is obviously quite premium, but it does help to show what the value of certain things should be, and I think that's positive. Doesn't mean it's accessible for everybody, but it does kind of help you think about how much maybe a merino wool jumper should cost. So I don't know, what do you guys think about it? I don't like cancel culture. I'm not into that. I don't think that helps anybody, but I hope that maybe they will do something. I hope maybe Zara will do something. I'd love to see that they kind of relaunch the partnership with some kind of charitable goal. I think that would be really cool. I think that might allay a lot of people's concerns, to come back and go, look, we messed this up, but here's what we're going to do to do it a bit better. I think that would be really great. What do you guys think? One of the things I've been enjoying about knitting, enjoying is maybe not the right word, one of the things that's been cool about knitting this cardigan is I kind of didn't realise until midway through until after I'd done the back, that what I was doing was raglan. So it's a paint box yarn construction pattern, and they describe how to do some decreases at the back, so I just kind of merrily went along. It was like knit 2, slip 1, pass 1 over. Fine, cool, keep doing that both sides of the back, great. And then you get to the front and they basically say continue to do raglan decreases. You think, oh, hang on, have I been doing raglan decreases? Turns out I have. So I've learned some new stuff doing that. The downside of that has been that doing the front, the pattern for the front, it's a free pattern through Lovecrafts, which is great, and the instructions for the front took me 10 goes at reading. I had to pause the telly last night to try and read them, to try and understand them, because my poor little brain could not, and eventually I had to write my own version of the pattern so that I could understand it, because it was something to do with doing a decrease at one side every 4 rows, and also doing a decrease at another side every 2 rows or something like that. So my little brain melted, and I had to, I'll put a picture in the footage of the little notes app thing that I had to write for myself to write it out. I had to write it out longhand, row 20, do this, row 15, do this, because I just couldn't hold it in my brain at the same time. It's one of the things I've been trying to get better at through knitting, is just being able to read the patterns. It still often feels like a really complicated way of understanding something, so any tips from you guys, really welcome. I don't know how. Sometimes I have to stop halfway through a pattern, go and Google it, look up an acronym. Even if the pattern is probably quite clear, I have to go and look up a tutorial because I just can't understand what it's really asking me to do. I don't know if that's something that you find as well. But I'm hoping that as I do more different techniques, that'll start to click a bit more, because I can already feel it a little bit with some where I've done slip knit or something. It seems like when you read the instruction for how to do that, that's a really weird way to describe something. But once you've done it a couple of times, it clicks. You go, oh yeah, okay, that's what they mean by that. I think that partly for me that's my dyspraxia kicking in, which was something I was going to talk a little bit about. But I'm somebody who's dyspraxic, which is a form of neurodiversity that affects how you recognise patterns, how you do things in space. It used to be called the clumsy child disease, illness, condition, which is probably not a very flattering condition, but basically, yeah, can make you really clumsy. It's a bit like dyslexia, but for space. And one of the reasons I think I'm loving knitting now so much is that I tried a few years ago and just couldn't get anywhere with it because of my dyspraxia. I think my brain just wouldn't process it, and it was kind of the same with paddleboarding for me, actually, is that I think because I've struggled with so many of these things so much, when I can crack something that's physical, that's to do with space and movement, I just feel really, really pleased. And I just feel really proud of myself. I think it often takes me longer than it might take other people to crack it. But once I do, I get a really big sense of achievement. So knitting for me is absolutely partly just showing, actually, okay, my dyspraxic brain can pick this up. Might take me longer than other people. Might mean I do things weirdly or differently, or I need to look at a YouTube tutorial 57 times before I can get it in my little brain. But once I have cracked it, I think the flip side is that I feel really accomplished in a way that's quite special to me. And I think it's really good for your brain to challenge yourself like that. Like if you have an area of things that's harder for you than your average Joe, then I think that you should. Saying average Joe always makes me laugh because I am Joe. And yeah, I think knitting has really helped me. I'm also somebody who suffers with anxiety quite a lot, and it has been amazing for helping with that. One of the symptoms for me is kind of physically not being able to keep my hands still. Drives my partner bananas. And at least if I'm moving my hands now, I'm usually moving them with knitting, not just kind of scratching my fingers together or something. So that's been another really brilliant benefit for me. Went down to Faversham yesterday with a friend for her birthday and discovered a fantastic knitting shop. I'll try and insert a picture of said knitting shop into the footage here so you guys can see it. It's called the Knitting Dispensary. I 100% did buy yarn, even though I have spent quite a lot of money on yarn lately. I feel like that's going to be a theme of some of my knitting content is, oh dear, I spent more money on yarn than I should have. My partner was asking why I needed yarn, and I think, well, you can't really answer that question. You just need yarn because you need yarn. And there's always new yarn. There's always different yarn. But I bought specific yarn this time. I was trying to be good, so I bought specific yarn because I want to knit the souffle tea, which is by Penrose Knits, and I wasn't really sure about mohair. I remember mohair being really itchy as a kid, so I just thought, you know what, I am not certain that is for me. So I found this really lovely, it's called Cumulus yarn, which is alpaca and silk, and it looks like a mohair. It's really, really skinny lace weight yarn, and I'm hoping that I can use it to make her souffle. I'm not sure if I've got enough. I've got 7 balls. I'm hoping that might be enough to make a souffle, but we shall see. So anyway, yeah, Faversham yesterday, part of my knitting life. I was saying to my partner in the car on the way down, oh, I wonder if they've got a knitting shop, because these little villages and towns sometimes have a really cute local knitting store. And they did, and it was brilliant. It was really good. It was massive compared to what I had been expecting. So yeah, super excited to discover a new little knitting store. It's not super local to me, so I don't think I'll be able to go back very often, but it was really lovely to see and a nice memento of my day out. That's part of my knitting week. The other part has been thinking about trying to get those socks I was talking about. So I'm hiking socks for Mum, finished by Mother's Day, which is next week, next Sunday. So I'm really hoping that I can crack those by Sunday. I'm working on the heel at the moment. I've put them aside slightly because I have done something to the heel. I don't quite know what I've done. I've got to the heel turn, not the heel flap. I got past the heel flap, heel turn, second pair of socks, and got to the end of the row and didn't have enough stitches left over. I was supposed to have some left, didn't have any left, so I have obviously done something weird. I don't quite know what yet, so I'm going to have to rip them back, which is why they are currently in timeout, because ripping back is not a thing that I like to do. So I'm going to try and get those back on the needles and get them finished by next week. If I do, then I'll put them in one of my knitting blogs. So yeah, hiking's one of my other big hobbies. I do a lot of hiking in Scotland. I'll be going up to Scotland again this summer, and I'm excited about not only hiking there, but also obviously getting yarn. I know that Scotland has fantastic wool, fantastic sheep, so I'm hoping that that will translate into fantastic yarn stores. If anybody has any recommendations, we're going to be in the north, in the Highlands, on the middle and then the west coast. So if anybody's got any recommendations for brilliant yarn shops on the west coast of Scotland, it's quite a specific ask, but I'd love to know about them. I'd really like to buy some yarn as my summer souvenir. My mum will think I've gone mad, but that's to be expected. So do lots of hiking. Got into that I think it's about 10 years ago now. Mum and I did a walk called the Great Glenway, which is this really long walk through Scotland. It's about 80 miles across the middle of Scotland, basically. And my mum had hiked a lot in her youth, and we just started doing it together. We actually raised money for a charity, the Lupus Trust, which I would check out. It's a brilliant charity for lupus, which is quite an underfunded area. It's a chronic illness that some people have. Somebody in my family has lupus, so we raised quite a lot of money by doing this amazing hike. And since then we've done a big hike every year, which has been brilliant. Mum and I do the walk. Dad is the chauffeur. The dog usually comes for some or part of it. We've got black labs. We've always had black labs. They usually come for some or all of it. And latterly we've been alternating hiking with paddleboarding, which I absolutely love. It's a nice way to rest your legs by having a little day on the boards instead. One of the things I was going to talk about today was how I have transitioned, more or less, over to knitting pretty much exclusively with natural fibres. When I started, I was doing big chunky acrylic, which is great, has its place. I think there's some really nice acrylic yarns that you can use, and it definitely helped me get started without spending an absolute fortune. And now I've moved to basically only knitting with natural fibres, and it is a lot more expensive for sure, so no shame to anybody that's not, but I guess I feel like if I'm going to invest all this time and energy into knitting something, then I want it to be really nice quality. I want it to be something that I could keep for ages, which I've got kind of complicated feelings about that. When we talk about like sustainable fashion, sustainable practices, I'm somebody whose body shape changes a lot, and it does really worry me that I spend like weeks or months making a garment, and then in a couple of years' time I'll be a completely different size. I don't really know what to do about that, apart from just accept that that is a thing that may happen. I think for some people, when your body size is more stable, that makes a lot of sense, but I think you need to be really careful in the kind of sustainable world that we don't forget. Some people's bodies do change a lot, and mine is one of them, and there's no shame in that. So anyway, as I say, trying to go for natural fibres, that is mostly for me a quality thing. I do prefer the feel of wool and cotton and linen and bamboo and things. I've always found Sophie gets hot really easily, so she says whilst knitting a thick wool jumper, I have found that these natural fibres, even wool, keeps you warm, but it doesn't make you like the sweaty way that like a nylon jumper can. So I'm trying to stick to these kinds of fibres. I've also been lately trying to shop less. Don't think I'm spending any less money, because I think I'm spending basically the money that I would otherwise spend on new clothes on yarn. So I'm not sure it's a successful like saving tip, but what I have been doing recently is scouting things I would like to buy and trying to think, is there a way that I could knit them? So I'll put a couple of pictures or clips in here, but I had a little rummage in And Other Stories, which I really like. Found some, I really want like a French jumper, you know, the stripy blue and white guys, and they seem to be everywhere at the moment, so I've seen a lot of those. I'm definitely going to knit myself one, and I'm trying to take that approach with, when I see something really beautiful, could I knit it for myself? And if yes, then put it back. Put it back on the shelf, don't buy it, because I'd rather actually spend the money on the yarn and enjoy knitting myself a thing. And that had me thinking about, where do I get inspiration for patterns from? And definitely the beginning of my knitting journey. So sometimes I just buy the yarn because it's lovely. I'm going to try not to do that as much. I'm going to try and buy with patterns in mind. But where do you guys get your inspiration from? Do you look at fast fashion and go, I could maybe make something like that, but a bit more beautiful and a bit more carefully made? Or do you just search Ravelry? I find Ravelry a bit overwhelming sometimes. There's almost so much choice that it's kind of hard to just go into it cold. So I think what I've been trying to do lately is realise, I've seen loads of jumpers with collars lately, and I'd quite like something with a collar. So that has helped me narrow down my Ravelry search a little bit. Instagram's great, but again, really overwhelming. There's so much on there. I could knit like everything from Petit knits, like everybody else, obviously. Penrose knits, I really like her style. I quite like quite feminine styles generally, things that have some shaping to them. I started with really chunky stuff, but I'm trying to transition away from that, just because I think I'll probably wear things a bit more if they're not quite so chunky. But yeah, that's what I've been thinking about knitting wise, is how do I try and keep it sustainable, and one of the ways is through yarn choice. Another thing I've been thinking about is gift knits. I know it's early in the year, but I had a friend's birthday recently and I couldn't think of anything to knit for her, because I'd already knit her a cowl, which is one of my favourite gift knits because they are chunky and quick. All the ones I've done are chunky and quick. But what do you knit for somebody in the spring? If you've got any ideas for toddlers, chunky toddlers, apparently he doesn't need any more jumpers, so that's out. But I'd like to make it a little bit cold, so I think it might be a couple more rows for me, and then I'll sign off and leave you guys to the rest of your Sunday. I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of knitting with me, a little bit of chatting. Oh, there's my needle, it vanished. I'm really enjoying making these videos. I hope that you're enjoying watching them. I'm going to do a proper podcast, I think, next week. I was going to do a review of my We Are Knitters sweater, but I think I might pause on that for a little while. But yeah, thank you for joining me. Happy knitting. And if you want to see more, please subscribe, please give me a like. I'm trying to get more people to find my channel. I'm also over on Instagram as the.millennialknitter, and I'd love to see you guys over there.